Kratos. One of the great gaming myths of our time is acting as if this guy is the strongest character in video games. Upon hearing the controversy in regards to Kratos versus Asura, the death battle, which is straight up Westoid propaganda, by the way, upon hearing of the result of this death battle, I decided it was about time to start addressing the real issue here. This idea that Kratos could beat anyone. This idea that Kratos is the strongest character in gaming is a complete and total farce. So today, I would like to address the top 10 characters that could definitely beat. Let's get the obvious one out of the way first. Yes, absolutely, Asura could beat Kratos to the point where it's not even really a debate, you know? Like, Death Battle had to pretend that Kratos could run at, like, 18 quadrillion times the speed of light or whatever in order to pretend as if he even had a chance. You know, the scale is different, the power levels are different. Like, Asura just has so much more going for him as a character. Not only when it comes to pure power level faggotry, which, by the way, is something that I really should condemn as a concept, but also as a character. When you really think about it, Asura as a concept is Kratos done far more effectively. You know, the character concept is essentially the same, but the fighting is better. The character is better. The character is more sympathetic, right? It's the same general concept, but executed much more thoroughly. Even if Asura wasn't as strong as Kratos, you would still end up supporting him in his fight, because Asura is just, objectively speaking, the better made, better designed, more entertaining character. One of the interesting things about the Kratos is stronger than anyone claim is the pretty clear fact that he can't even handle one of his direct inspirations, Dante from Devil May Cry. Dante's faster, has more credibility, has dealt with far greater threats than Kratos ever has. The reality of the situation is that Kratos is just not on the same level as the average Japanese action game protagonist. And Dante is just one example as to that phenomenon. One of the giant copes that Kratos fans have, actually the biggest cope, is this idea that, like, well, he killed all of the Greek gods, with no real understanding of just how worthless the Greek gods are in the God of War universe, just how much more of a threat that the average demon is. You know, Dante's lineage is probably the antithesis to Kratos's, you know, being the son of Sparta who goes on to fight demons on behalf of humanity. You know, Kratos is the kind of person that he would go after, right? And when you really look at the gameplay, you really get this sense of just how easily Dante would deal with the slow, lumbering Kratos. You know, dodging all of his attacks. You know, outspeeding him with movesets like Quicksilver. Right. The difference in their fighting capacity is obvious by simply watching the cutscenes and watching the gameplay. There is no debate. Dante comes out on top. It could be said that God Hand is the antithesis to God of War, in the sense where it is a universe that doesn't take itself seriously at all. It's just about a guy going around beating up demons. But when you really look at what happens in this game, when you think about it for 2 seconds, you realize that Gene, the protagonist, is incredibly strong. Some of the things he pulls off in this game as casual moves, such as dragon kicking people into orbit, having them go around the Milky Way star system, and then just come crashing down to the planet is just unreal. And that's not some like end game super special move. It's something you'll get at the very beginning. Jean is very clearly on a level far beyond that of most video game protagonists. And unfortunately, because of God Hand's somewhat obscure cult following, it's not all that widely known. But let it be known that Jean is legit one of these people that would easily be able to overpower and humiliate Kratos.
My arm, my arm, my arm, my arm, my arm, my arm, I summon up the powers of the God Hand!
If you really think about it, the only reason people believe Kratos is strong is because of how graphic God of War actually is. Because if you actually think about it, Sora surpasses Kratos' accomplishments before the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. He's able to beat Hades, someone who's not even the primary antagonist. But Sora goes ahead and does it anyway, whacking him with the giant key, and this is just the start. This is the first game. He goes on to fight the Titans, he goes on to fight Sephiroth, he goes on to fight, characters like Ansem, Xehanort, the other Xehanorts. Sora is on a whole other level. I know people like to meme that, well, Kratos is like a global thing. Sora travels the stars, beating up everyone he finds with a giant key. Sora has so much more credibility than Kratos. It's honestly not even funny, right? Take away the graphic nature of God of War, and you will find that Sora stomps him quite handedly. Kratos would not be able to stand up to the Heartless. I was actually looking at my notes, and I realized that a lot of the characters that I had picked out that were way stronger than Kratos were JRPG characters. People like Cloud, like Sephiroth, Terra, the Shin Megami Tensei guys, Persona. All of them have shown far more feats and capabilities than Kratos has ever even dreamed of, right? All of them are far surpass Kratos. And it kind of made me feel as if the JRPG genre as a whole is on a whole other level than the God of War series. Because these games tackle more powerful entities. These games have higher stakes. They require more skill, more time, and the characters grow and develop across a single game far more than Kratos has in his entire existence. The JRPG character can beat the final boss at, on average, far before his or her level cap. When you really think about that, the JRPG protagonist can grind to become way more powerful than they need to be to defeat the final boss at the end of the game. In theory, all of them can just grind to the point where they could beat Kratos, no matter how powerful he is, no matter what time or place. The JRPG character have friends that can back them up and defeat Kratos just as they defeated God at the end of their game. This may be something that a lot of people don't want to admit, but Link from The Legend of Zelda is way stronger than a lot of people realize. Simply comparing the combat between Breath of the Wild and God of War 2018 shows just this radical difference in capability in game. Link can do flips, he can utilize all this equipment, he can, craft items on the fly, he can run circles around his opponents, he can overpower foes that would have Kratos just eating dirt immediately. Link is incredibly strong, and the lore kind of in these games kind of emphasizes that even more. Link was beating grown men by the time he was 4 years old, right? he's deflected laser beams with like a pot lid. Okay, like Link is on a whole other level. But it's not something Zelda fans talk about because it's not something that really matters. Link is a great video game character because the games themselves are great. Like his actual capabilities as a fighter don't really have anything to do with why we like him or why we respect him or why we love these games. The reality of the situation is that Tears of the Kingdom is one of the best games ever made, and no God of War game will ever even come close to what these games have accomplished. People don't like being told this, but it really is true. Kirby is by far one of the strongest video game characters in the industry. This guy can shatter planets with a karate chop. He can beat all kinds of monstrosities. He can copy the abilities of anything he comes across. And perhaps most glaringly, he's constantly topping himself and doing more and more extreme things with each game. These aren't just isolated incidences or one-off jokes, right? These are real, practical, viable demonstrations of just how high the power scaling in Kirby actually is. It far surpasses anything in God of War, and Kirby as a character is an absolute monster who God of War fans should fear. Like, this is a very good example of just how far ahead of the industry Nintendo actually is. That this kind of character can exist and excel in this capacity. God of War fanboys don't like acknowledging just how much further ahead Bayonetta is than their favorite IP. It's more stylish, it's more fast paced, it's more intense, and the story clearly goes far beyond anything that God of War has ever accomplished. Average bosses in this game far surpass anything that Kratos has ever fought, and the combat system being more sophisticated, Bayonetta having the ability to slow down time, and the fact that the stakes keep getting higher with each subsequent game, to the point by the end of 3, Bayonetta's fighting against multiversal threats really just demonstrates just how strong of a protagonist Bayonetta actually is. Nothing that Kratos has ever done has even come close to what Bayonetta accomplishes on a daily basis. Segata Sanshiro, Segata Sanshiro, Segata Sanshiro is the greatest video game advertising campaign character ever created. If you're not playing a Sega Saturn, he's coming after you, and he is gonna judo throw you into the dirt. Segata Sanshiro is awesome, and it's been demonstrated several times of just how unstoppable he truly is. This is the character that trained Sonic the Hedgehog. This is the character that could defeated Kazuma Kiryu in a fight. This is the character who stopped Sony PlayStation from destroying Sega HQ with a missile. He is by far the greatest and most powerful video game icon in history. If God of War is a twisted perversion of what gods are supposed to represent, Actraiser is probably the most pure opposite of that, in which your character, God, descends upon the earth to bring salvation to his people. With a giant weapon and a civilization-building angel, you're charging through all these levels, slashing apart demons, and bringing salvation to humankind. The exact opposite of what Kratos does. And the Master, as he's referred to in this game, cannot be killed. He'll just keep coming back again and again until he wins, and he will become more and more powerful as the civilization develops and grows in faith to him. As Kratos becomes more and more powerful, as he kills more gods and acquires more and more abilities and gets more and more contrived powers and abilities, the Actraiser too will become more powerful as the people develop and have more develop their faith in him and overcome their own personal problems and discover how to destroy Kratos. Because this isn't just about a one-off fight, it's about ideals. Does Kratos represent anything? And the answer is no. Kratos at his core is just a contrived character that exists to try and act as if to create this illusion that PlayStation is some mature company that produces games for real adults, like, oh, look at all this gore, like, oh man, Kratos has sex before he starts his adventure, oh man, it's so mature, it's so manly, it's the greatest thing ever. It's very shallow. Kratos is not a well-developed character. He's not interesting. He doesn't help anyone. He doesn't have meaningful connections with other people. He brutalizes innocents for no reason, right? Because he's angry. Get out of here. The Actraiser, in contrast, doesn't really seem to have any interest or goals besides helping humanity, besides going on his adventure and defeating the demons that plague the land. The Actraiser is absolutely the kind of entity that would destroy Kratos. And that is why the Master is my pick as the number one character that could defeat Kratos.